Well, it's welcome to a young gentleman here, and I call him young because I knew him from 40 years ago, but doesn't say too much about me. However, he's based in Toronto. He's done a lot for the soccer, indeed, and as you know, I've been on my travels getting interviews in Canada for the Philippines. I'm going to say, how do you explain to somebody who's dedicated all their life to football? I think he's a man of vision in Canadian soccer. We'll call it soccer. However, it's interesting that it took me a long time to track him down, but finally I've got him in a place where we're in a goal net, but neither of us, I should say, have ever played goalkeeping. So it's John DeBenedictis. John, it's great finally catching up with you, and you've worn many hats over the years in soccer. I mean, you've even been involved with the Canadian national team at one part and giving some input.
A little bit, not. I wouldn't say I actually worked for the Canadian national team, but I've talked to all the national coaches at one point or another, and in one case I even suggested maybe I could help them, but it was a little too late for Canada to get past around this a few years ago.
Well, of course, we're going to get to how Canada's made this World Cup coming up, indeed. But I mean, you've got a background of writing. You're very well educated. You've written quite a few articles in magazines, and we'll look at those a little later. You've also produced a coaching book. Now, I want to get into that because when you see a coaching book, a coach looks at a book and he says, "Oh, how do I put this? How do I implement this on the training ground?"
Yeah. My book is for coaches to help players, teach players from a psychological point of view on how to score more goals, and I think that a lot of it is mental. And we did talk about goalkeeping. I actually did play as a goalkeeper.
Oh, you did?
I did. I was pretty short. I was a short goalkeeper.
You're supposed to do your background history. Any budding interviewing star there, always do your background checks then. So you played in goals?
Yeah, I played York University. We won a national title, and then I played in the National Soccer League, which was a pro league, although as a Canadian we only got paid semi-pro money. All the imports got the money. For a team called Toronto Ukrainian, which of course I'm not Ukrainian, but they were very kind people, and of course I feel quite bad for what's going on with them right now. So yeah, I played as a keeper, and because I played as a keeper, I figured from a coaching point of view, I knew how to coach players, how to score goals on me, all the weaknesses that I might have, and then I looked at that and started to come up with different things from a psychological point of view, because I think a lot of goals are decided in 9 seconds or less before an opportunity presents itself. What's going on in the mind of the player? And so many times they make bad decisions. So with my thoughts, I put together a program. I tested it out on my son. That worked very well, and then a few players, and I saw an unbelievable improvement in the players and their decision making to score more goals. And so that's when I decided to write my book, develop my course for players. And I've also spoken at the U.S. National Soccer Coaches Association of America, which is now called United Soccer Coaches, in their convention 3 times, and in front of quite a few coaches. They have a huge turnout. Almost 10,000 coaches show up every year in different parts of the U.S. So, and there's different sessions going on at all times. So
9 seconds. Why can't it be 6 seconds?
Well, so here's what I did. Sometimes it's 2 seconds and it's 1 second. But I picked the goal that Maradona scored, the goal of the century, if you remember, against England.
The hand of God.
Same game. Quite a famous game, eh? 2 things happened there: the goal of the century and the hand of God. But Maradona, it took him 9 seconds to get from center to score that goal. So I said, we're going to pick 9 seconds as the maximum length. But quite often, it's 1 or 2 second decision that you have to make when you get the ball. Where do you place it? What part of the foot do you use? Do you take an extra touch or not? Where do you go? Do you speed up or slow down? So that takes usually 2-3 seconds. but 9 seconds is based on that Maradona goal.
Right, 9 seconds.
Yeah.
So
Or less.
this is typical of the game, isn't it? We always remember the goal scorer. We don't remember guys like myself who had to win the ball halfway line, get out on the wing, beat 2 players, get that ball across on the 18-yard spot, and then bingo, Maradona scores the goal. But at that particular time, I always remember the hand of God. But interesting. So that's how you've processed the 9 seconds.
Yeah.
What makes a good coach?
A good coach. That's a good question. Obviously, it depends on the level that you're dealing with. You know, with young kids, you got to be patient. I think you got to almost be a teacher. I mean, you're not just coaching; you're teaching the game, you're teaching the skills. And I know in Holland, you know, they're looking for teachers to be coaches. You know, they want you to have that teaching degrees, and that's why a lot of coaches come up through the Dutch system. But you know, teaching is an important part. Then as you move up, it's you know, you have to pick players and you have to deal with parents. And then as the kids get older, you got to deal with personalities. So you're a manager of personalities. And of course, at the pro level, that's all yours. Like, I remember talking to Keith Eddy, who used to coach the Toronto Blizzard. He says the coach is really a psychologist. You know,
Yes.
He's got to deal with players. You know, he's not teaching skills.
But this is on the field and off the field,
both.
in the social side.
Huge. Yeah, big. It's a big part of it. And decision making, you know, coaches have to decide at the higher levels within a game. Do they change the system? Who do they sub? You know, what are the weaknesses of the other team? What have they done to adjust? So a lot of decision making. So coach, you know, he's got to be really in tune. He's got to be a leader, and he's got to be good with people. And but as I said, the younger age groups, you know, it's a bit different. You got to be. You're dealing with young kids. You should know how kids develop. You know, some coaches maybe they're not talking to kids in the right way, and you're talking also. You know, there's a difference between males and females. So if you're coaching males, you may need to know different things than coaching females. So yeah, coaches, there's a lot involved. In some cases, the coach is the treasurer, the promoter, you know, the bus driver. So it all depends.
And sometimes the medical advisor. And I want to come to this point
Right.
because a little earlier, John, before you sat down, I was speaking to a gentleman. He has 4 kids. 2 of them in the academy, that's Toronto Football Academy here. And he said one of them has shot up 6 inches. So now when you look at it, the bone structure, yes, goes up, lengthens. But how about the muscles? Do the muscles grow in the same fashion? And I'm going back when I was coaching with Wexford. We had a striker, and within a season and a half, he shot up and he lost all his touch and balance for scoring goals.
Yeah. You know, I always say that you can't really judge a player until they've gone through their adolescent growth spurt, because they can change so much. You see some kids that are very coordinated, and like you say, and sometimes those kids just need patience to get back to being coordinated again with their new bodies. And quite often, coaches don't have the patience, and they cut those kids. But they may have been great players. So I think being able to get past that growth spurt, which for guys is 15, 16, girls it's a little bit earlier. But I think you have to have patience. We start judging kids at 8, 9, and 10. Parents get excited if their kids scoring lots of goals at 8 and 9 and 10, 11. Where, you know, what's going to happen after that? Some of the best players that I've seen were you know, average players or barely made the team. In fact, you mentioned in my book, one of the players came to me at 14, first time ever playing soccer, and then he ended up playing for Toronto Blizzard Reserve, and he was going to be drafted by the Toronto Blizzard, the North American Soccer League, and then the league folded.
Yeah.
So, unfortunate. But you know, that late developing kid, sometimes we neglect them. So I agree with you 100%. We've got to take that into account and be patient with kids.
Just before we wrap our part 1 interview up, I want to ask John here about how do you handle parents with junior players, both the female side and the boys side, because I've seen parents just lose it on the sideline.
Yeah, that's again another great point. You know, first of all, if you're a TD, a technical director of a club, you got to make sure your coaches don't lose it. And nowadays, their parents are asked to do a number of courses before their kid can play at a rep level. So they've got to take ethics in sports and respect in sports. It goes over all these things about, now does it actually work? You know, some players or parents will take those courses because they have to, or the kids can't play, and then they're still going crazy on the sideline, discouraging young referees even by criticizing. I think as a coach, you know, you've got to deal with any problem parent and let them know that you're actually hurting your own son or daughter if you're acting unprofessional, say, on the sidelines. And sometimes, you know, maybe you got to say you're not even allowed on the bench. So I know the association here in Ontario, and I think all of Canada, wants these parents to take these online courses, but it doesn't always work. Coach has to be able to deal with that.
There you have it. I've always said that John DeBenedictis has been a man of vision for football in Canada for more than 40 years. I mean, I've been associated in Canada for about that time, but there was only a handful of people who dedicated their time, and I say wealth, the wealth of their experience with junior players. And occasionally we see them turn into professionals. But we're going to ask John to come back on part 2. We're going to discuss many things. World Cup, of course, and we're going to mention So let me get this right because it's a tongue twister. NSCAC, and we'll tell you exactly what that means. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Pete Irvin, full of love of the game, of course, as they say. And we'll have part 2 coming up pretty shortly with the interview with John DeBenedictis there. And I tell you, wow, this guy is full of knowledge. It's a pity we can't put it in a bottle. This has been brought to you by Sun Sports and Bad Beat Sportswear. Share, like, subscribe and ring the bell for news, interviews, breaking stories. Thanks for watching On the Ball Report.